photo was taken sometime in the 1960s, I think at the late 1960s. You can see the protest sign guy there on the left, the guy in the front, and then the two guys walking behind him. But if you look closely at this, you can also see a little bit of color on the photo, right? It's a black and white photo, but you can see a little discoloration. You can see some red lines coming into the frame. And then in the margins, you can see there, it's 1, 2, 3. Someone has drawn on this old photo in red pen. They've numbered the people in this picture. And there's this other little part here at the bottom, this little blue-green tab. And that shows that they have figured out who these people are. 1, 2, 3. Now, they haven't figured out the name of the first guy, the guy with the protest sign. They only have a hometown listed for him. But they've got names and hometowns for number 2 and number 3, the other two guys in the photo. And you'll see it's the same thing here. People marching, some kind of protest, but then scrawled on the photo in a marker, 1, 2, 3. Cataloging and indexing the individual marchers in this photo. These photos are not somebody documenting these marches and these protests just to show that they happened. This is not journalistic work. You can tell by the annotations on these photos that this is actually the work of an investigation. After the Supreme Court ordered the end of segregation in schools, after the landmark Supreme Court ruling Brown v. Board of Education, in the state of Mississippi, they established by law something they called the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission. In 1956, the legislature in Mississippi passed, and the then Governor J.P. Coleman signed a law creating the Sovereignty Commission for the purpose of defying the federal government, and specifically of preserving racial segregation in Mississippi. The Sovereignty Commission's work included spying on the citizens of Mississippi and on outside activists who joined them in pushing for civil rights in the state. They collected their photographs, and they found out their names, and they compiled intelligence reports on the people of Mississippi. And this secret work went on for a very, very long time, long enough to go from grainy black and white photos like these to full color, long enough to capture thousands of images of people who we don't necessarily know, and also images of people like Martin Luther King Jr. This is one of Dr. King's mugshots, as found in the files of the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission. Mississippi Sovereignty Commission kept on with this work until 1973. The state officially disbanded the commission in 1977. And according to the official history, by that time, Mississippi, with this state agency, had collected enough intel on its own citizens to fill 6 filing cabinets, along with, quote, 2 unsealed pasteboard boxes, 2 separate folders in a manila envelope, and a bound volume of minutes. They locked those records away and ordered them kept under seal until the year 2027. Now, the fight to get the state to open up those records earlier started the same year they locked them up, started in 1977. And that fight was a long-fought fight. It took a very long time. There have been a lot of stages in that fight. But the reason we've got those photos that I just showed you is that these photos and these records are finally now all online. As of 2002, you can see everything in the collection. Someday, I myself am planning a long field trip to go sit in the archives of the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission to go through these records by hand, in part because they are filled with these incredible photographs. Also, some very, very telling memos, like this one, which was written in early 1965. So it was written between the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And this is absolutely amazing. This is a state document, okay? Quote, "It's necessary that we remove from the files any reports of investigators which might in any way be construed to mean that the Sovereignty Commission has interfered in any way with voter registration drives or demonstrations. The number of applications received or the number who passed the voting test. It also means those reports which list the names of applicants for voter registration tests. These reports will be removed from the file and kept available for future disposal. A later decision on the disposal will be forthcoming from the director. All future reports of investigators must clearly show that the purpose of such investigation is to ascertain the names of any subversives or non-resident professional agitators, and that it is no concern of the Sovereignty Commission as to how many colored residents of the state of Mississippi make application to vote." And all of our records that show otherwise, we got to take those out of the files, you guys. It was hard fought to get them to do it, but to Mississippi's credit, where you will find this incredibly damning memo now is on a Mississippi state website. This is no longer secret stuff. They are being open about what they did. For Mississippi, making these archives public is part of reckoning with the past. So is this. Mississippi is building a new civil rights museum, reckoning with its past in a public and official way. It's the state that is opening this museum. It's the state that is paying for it with public money. And so now, curators for the state of Mississippi are traveling around the state, visiting people who have stories to tell and artifacts to share about the Civil Rights War in Mississippi. And for the people who had to fight the state for their civil rights, you got to think it must be a leap of faith, right? I mean, handing over stuff to the same state, to the state of Mississippi, which they fought for so long for their rights, trusting the state to handle these precious artifacts and to do right by them. The family of Vernon Dahmer, who was firebombed and then shot to death in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in 1966 when he was the local NAACP president, his family says they are willing to loan the state the wreckage of his firebombed truck with the bullet holes in it, but they are not willing to give the state the truck outright because the family does not yet have complete faith in the state running this new museum. The people who are planning this new telling of history say that it's not going to be whitewashed. They're going to tell all sides of the story. They're going to tell the story of the people who fought for civil rights, but also the much more uncomfortable story of the people who fought against it, including the state itself. I mean, this memo came from a state agency. It came from the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission. The memo is CC'd to the governor's office. The memo that says, let's hide the part in our files that shows that we were interfering with black people's right to vote in this state. That's part of what we did. Let's hide those part of the files. Official state document, CC the governor. They broke ground on the museum in Mississippi in October. Everybody was there for the groundbreaking. Governor Phil Bryant, you see there on the left, he gave a big speech. Almost hidden by the flag there on the right, that's Myrlie Evers Williams. She's the widow of the civil rights martyr Medgar Evers. Among the items you'll be able to consider in this new museum is the gun, the hunting rifle that was used to kill her husband. This is very difficult stuff, but they are going ahead in Mississippi. And you can see in this photo from the Jackson Free Press that Ms. Evers really is nearly hidden by the Confederate emblem that's part of the Mississippi flag. The old Confederacy lives on in the Mississippi state flag. The rebel flag takes up much of the territory of what is the flag of the state. And yes, in a way, it's vestigial, it's leftover, but also it's not. I mean, this is not a historic picture of Myrlie Evers. This is now. And that is still the Mississippi state flag. And sometimes, just visually, it is hard to tell the difference between what used to be and what still is. The local Mississippi chapter of the Sons of Confederate Veterans likes to buy billboards, even now, wishing happy birthday to Confederate heroes. They celebrate the War of Southern Independence. Quote, Southerners have less reason to be loyal to the collective enterprise of the United States than does any group of citizens. The South was invaded, laid waste, and conquered when it tried to uphold the original and correct understanding of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That, you would think it's vestigial past, it's still here, is an uncomfortable thing. And it's a very uncomfortable political thing about the guy who is giving the incumbent Republican U.S. Senator from Mississippi a run for his money right now. Chris McDaniel's challenge for that U.S. Senate seat currently held by Thad Cochran. Mr. McDaniel's challenge has been dogged by reports of his having been a featured guest at a Sons of Confederate Veterans neo-Confederate event. Today, Chris McDaniel's dealing with the challenge of audio surfacing from his old radio show in Mississippi, in which he said that if they pass reparations for slavery, he will stop paying his taxes, and so on. Right? Interestingly, though, when this scandal broke today, Chris McDaniel and his campaign said they weren't worried about it. His campaign said there will be no consequences for the Republican Party in Mississippi, even if a pseudo-neo-Confederate guy like Chris McDaniel beats Thad Cochran. Don't worry about it. It won't make it less possible that the Republicans can hold on to that U.S. Senate seat, because his campaign tells NBC tonight, quote, it is metaphysically impossible for a Democrat to win in Mississippi.